All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a really full session today, and people will continue to join us throughout this session. So thank you all for joining us today for our event focused on local capacity strengthening. My name is Stephanie Keller, and I'm the Youth Engagement and Localization Specialist in USAID Center for Education, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. We are pleased to offer interpretation for this event, so please go to the globe icon to select from the available languages. If you speak English, we have a Nigerian Sign Language interpreter who will be part of our panel later, and you will need to select English from the interpretation icon at that point to hear the interpretation. And I also want to acknowledge that with this many different types of interpretation, there may be some pauses while we wait for the translation into different languages. Auto closed captioning will be available in English. To activate that, please select the closed captioning option on the bottom menu. And for a last bit of housekeeping, you should see an announcement at the top of the screen, but please be advised that this session is being recorded. So over the next hour, we will have some opening remarks, give you an overview of 3 recently released documents that support our efforts to strengthen local capacity within education systems, and host a panel where we have invited some colleagues from our USAID programs in Nigeria, and we look forward to hearing their experiences. To begin today's event, I want to welcome the Center for Education Director, Allison Weiner, to offer some introductory remarks. Allison is a Foreign Service Officer, and prior to joining the Center for Education, she served in Ethiopia, Jordan, the Middle East Regional Platform, and as a senior advisor in the Bureau for Policy, Planning, and Learning. Allison, over to you.
Thank you so much. I trust everyone can hear me okay.
Yes.
Hi, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Weiner. I'm the Director of the Center for Education. I'm really thrilled to be here to open this event on local capacity strengthening in education, from principles to practice. USAID's vision for education assistance is to achieve a world where partner country education systems enable children and youth to acquire education and skills. We've made great progress over the last 10 years, and we've continued to refine our approach to better help learners access education and to gain skills through our programs. However, our challenge today is how to build on and utilize the evidence on strengthening partner country systems and partner country education systems to ensure that all children gain the skills needed for success. Sorry, I'm just confirming my language here. I don't know if that popped up. Thank you. Okay. So the 2022 USAID Local Capacity Strengthening Policy established 7 principles for effective and equitable local capacity strengthening. And USAID's renewed focus on localization represents a global commitment to these principles and an opportunity to advance locally led action for sustainable solutions. Local ownership and system strengthening are also prominently featured in our 2018 education policy and the recently released 2024 to 2029 U.S. government strategy on international basic education. While articulating, aligning, and promoting these principles at the policy level has been essential, we must go further and translate localization principles into practice to achieve sustainable results at scale and to help children and youth reach their potential. What excites me most about this broader initiative, as well as the guidance that will be presented today, is that we are taking our policy and USAID principles seriously and translating them into practical evidence-based actions. Before we begin, I want to share 3 key takeaways to keep in mind as you listen to today's presentation on the new implementation guidance and on local capacity strengthening. First, strengthening local systems and capacity is not an add-on, but it is central to achieving sustained, measurable learning outcomes. Even in crisis and conflict settings, we can strengthen systems at the school, community, regional, or national level. Second, changing the performance of a system takes time. We must employ a long-term perspective that respects the amount of time it takes to strengthen a system while advancing progress within an activity. Third, education systems are best and most sustainably strengthened by the actors who will remain a part of that system after the conclusion of a program or an award. USAID can help support, mentor, catalyze, seed, and convene processes to strengthen local systems. To be successful, our work must always be locally led and in partnership with local actors. Now I'll hand it again back over to Stephanie to begin the presentation. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Allison. So before we dive into today's program, we're going to get a quick idea of how much you already know about the different resources we're discussing today. And this is going to involve playing a quick game of fact or myth. And we're going to show a series of slides. And if you think the information on the slide is a fact or true, then you'll use the yes button, which is a green check mark from the reaction menu on the bottom of the screen. And if you think the information on the slide is a myth or not true, then use the no button, which is a red X from the reaction menu on the bottom of the screen. And so we want to do a quick practice round. So if everyone can, hold on, it's asking me to confirm what language I'm speaking, English. So if everyone can give me a yes, if you're ready to play fact or myth. So go to the reaction menu in the bottom of the screen, green check mark, you're ready. I see a few people popping up. Okay, I think that we all have found it. Great, okay. So now the next test of our skill, click it again to turn it off so that we all start with a blank option. Okay, great, okay. I think that we have an excellent team here. You guys are all ready to play fact or myth. So if we go to the next slide, this is our first question. USAID's education policy vision is a world where all children and youth acquire education and skills. So click the green check mark for yes or the red X for no if you think that this is incorrect, this is a myth. Right, I see it coming in. All right, so most people think that this is a fact. We'll give it another second because I know we have interpretation. All right, I think we're holding at most people thinking this is a fact. All right, let's go to the next slide. This one was a bit tricky, friends. This is a myth. It's at least partially incorrect. The definition from the previous slide is missing a core component of the vision. USAID's education policy vision is a world where partner country education systems enable all children and youth to acquire education and skills. So that middle portion about partner country education system is a crucial factor in children and youth acquiring the education and skills they need. All right, so now turn your reaction off so we can go to our next one. Okay. The next one, the goal of capacity strengthening is to get more direct awards to local partners. So again, check mark for yes, red X for no. Someone put in blue arrows. I don't know what those mean, but okay. All right. I'm seeing some good answers here. Most of us think that this is a myth. If we go to the next slide. Absolutely, this is a myth. USAID views capacity strengthening as successful when it strengthens the performance of local actors and local systems in achieving and sustaining demonstrable results. So again, if you turn off your reaction, and we'll start blank, we have just a couple more. Okay, and if we go to the next slide, Maddie. All right, our next fact or myth. Capacity strengthening is not possible in crisis and conflict settings. If you think this is true, if this is a fact, green check mark, red X for no, this is a myth. Okay, excellent. I see we are uniformly in agreement here. Maddie, if you go to the next slide. Yes, this is a myth, right? Capacity strengthening is a vital part of strengthening resilience and enabling partner countries to prevent, mitigate, and recover from crises that would otherwise cause setbacks. All right, last time, if you go ahead and clear your check marks or your X's. Okay, last slide. CBLD9 can and should be used to measure education system strengthening. Click the green check mark for yes or the red X for no. Okay, we're a little bit more mixed in this one. I'm going to let some more responses come in. All right, I think we can go to the next slide. So this is a fact. CBLD9 is an agency-wide standard indicator to measure local capacity strengthening outcomes of organizations, and it can be used to measure improved education system performance by counting the subunits of complex institutions. So that includes things like measuring ministry directorates, decentralized offices, and higher education institution departments. So now let's learn a bit more about the different resources that we will be presenting. So USAID released the Local Capacity Strengthening Policy in 2022. The policy identifies 7 principles for effective and equitable local capacity strengthening. The guidance documents we're discussing today are intended to translate those principles into concrete actions and practices that can be applied across the education continuum and USAID's program cycle. If we go to the next slide, Maddie. Okay. The 3 guidance documents we'll be talking about are, first, strengthening the capacity of local education systems, which offers a how-to guide for local capacity strengthening guidance across the education continuum. It is also newly available on Education Links in a user-friendly education local capacity strengthening toolkit. Second is the USAID Higher Education Capacity Strengthening Toolkit. This offers a collection of resources to improve strengthening institutional capacity of higher education institutions across sectors. And then finally, the CBLD9 guidance, which is a how-to guide for measuring performance improvement utilizing the CBLD9 Standard Foreign Assistance Indicator for Education. So in short, the first guidance covers the continuum. The second guidance will cover higher education. And the third focuses on monitoring, evaluation, learning, and CBLD9. And I will now hand it over to Andrew Moe, the System Strengthening, Governance, and Localization Specialist and USAID Center for Education, to present the first guidance. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. So when we started working on this guidance nearly a year ago, what we heard from USAID staff and implementing partners is that we wanted something practical, as Allison mentioned. And the aim of this guidance is to provide implementation guidance across the education continuum that really focuses on taking those principles and turning them into practice. The guidance includes a brief analysis of existing evidence, but focuses primarily on providing the program cycle guidance with practical tools, case studies, examples, and links. And if you look in the chat, we'll drop a link to the resource in the chat box. Next slide. What we also regularly heard is that these large documents can be inaccessible. I think we've all opened an 80-page document and found it hard to engage with. And so we've worked on creating an accessible EduLinks online toolkit to navigate the guidance and serve as a resource library for local capacity strengthening that can then grow over time. We know we're learning a lot on this topic and want a platform that can serve as a one-stop shop for the best and latest on local capacity strengthening and education. So we will also be dropping a link to this resource in the chat box. Let's take a look at what's in the guidance. The guidance starts out with a literature review to cover the current limitations and promising practices. Out of this emerged several key shifts in practices. The first is a focus on moving from a deficiency-based capacity building model to asset-based strengthening and capacity sharing, recognizing the existing capacity that exists. Second, shift from a focus on short-term outputs to employing long-term mindsets with realistic timelines and targets. Third, from a narrow focus to employing a systems lens that recognizes the broader enabling environment and strengthens the organizations that are involved in ensuring learning outcomes happen at the classroom level. And fourth, addressing systemic barriers to equity and inclusion. The guidance then covers the program cycle. The first part of a program cycle, right, is the country and strategic planning. Under each of these in the guidance, you'll find guidance, but also importantly, illustrative actions that can be taken. So it starts out with the importance of starting with an understanding of the education system, forming strategic and equitable partnerships, employing long-term mindsets and planning, and engaging in donor coordination. The next part of the guidance then focuses on the project and activity design. It includes guidance on a collaborative design process, context analysis, theory of change, technical approaches, and model and award instruments. A few things I just wanted to note. The context analysis section includes a new resource on selecting context analysis tools and depending on what you're aiming to learn. And the technical approaches includes a variety of approaches both at the organizational and institutional levels, as well as considerations on how you might approach strengthening the enabling environment to ensure that organizations can be successful. It also includes case studies and resource spotlights like the screenshot on the right side of the screen that you see. Finally, the model and awards document. Next slide. Finally, the model and awards document documents varying approaches that we can utilize for strengthening local capacity when we are engaged with implementing partners and local partners as part of an award. And finally, we explore monitoring, evaluation, and learning across the program cycle. The MEL work really begins at that design phase. This section explores a few key considerations, such as how to foster participation, being realistic about the time frame, testing your theory of change assumptions, and focusing on measuring performance, not just capacity. We also cover MEL priorities at the activity and inception phases, how to measure and evaluate capacity strengthening using standard custom indicators, context indicators, and complexity-aware evaluation approaches such as outcome mapping, outcome harvesting, social network analysis, and more. Now, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Rebecca Schultz, who will give us an overview of the Higher Education Capacity Strengthening Toolkit.
Thank you, Andrew. You may be wondering, why focus on higher education? Higher education institutions are trusted local partners in many communities, and strengthening their capacity is key to advancing localization efforts and achieving development outcomes across all sectors. The Center for Education launched the first part of the Higher Education Capacity Strengthening Toolkit at the Global Education Conference in April. The toolkit is a collection of evidence-based resources to improve investments in higher education institutions and is intended to strengthen the capacity of USAID staff and partners to design, implement, and manage innovative higher education capacity strengthening programming. And we're going to drop the link to the toolkit in the chat for you. so check that out. The toolkit currently features 4 documents which you can navigate through in the order that meets your needs. The Introduction to Higher Education Capacity Strengthening resource helps explain the versatile roles that higher education institutions can play in USAID activities. They can be the entity delivering local capacity strengthening and/or the recipient of that assistance. The next resource, 6 Questions to Consider, is meant to help USAID and its partners scaffold their thinking when designing or implementing higher education capacity strengthening activities. Use one or more of the questions to provoke brainstorming and innovative thinking within your team or with partner country counterparts. The Higher Education Interventions Approaches Inventory provides readers information about common intervention approaches found in USAID higher education programming. All interventions should be tailored for each new activity and context, but the inventory provides a starting point for design and innovation. Finally, considerations for engaging U.S. higher education institutions as partners acknowledges the long history U.S. universities have of partnering with higher education institutions in partner countries to enhance research and scientific collaboration, in addition to advancing cross-sectoral development objectives. The U.S. has nearly 4,000 higher education institutions, ranging from world-class research universities to liberal arts colleges, minority-serving institutions, and community colleges. This resource explains some of the different types of higher education institutions in the United States, describes potential challenges in partnering with them, and offers tips for developing productive partnerships. Next slide. Perfect. In addition to the products just described, we have a number of additional resources in progress on topics such as accreditation, higher education in crisis and conflict, good practices for higher education capacity strengthening activities, and then of course, monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Like many of our other higher education resources, the Higher Education Capacity Strengthening Toolkit will be a living resource. As we learn and grow in this space, knowledge products will be updated and added. And of course, we'd love to hear about what you are learning as you embark on this work and what additional resources you may need. And now I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Deborah Greben, who will explore MEL and capacity strengthening through the CBLD9 standard indicator. Deborah, over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So my name is Deborah Greben. I'm a senior MEL advisor with the USAID Center for Education in Washington, D.C. And I am here to talk about CBLD9 or Capacity Building 9. And so you might be asking, why are we talking about an indicator in a webinar about local capacity strengthening? Well, CBLD9 measures the outcomes of our capacity strengthening work with local organizations. We also have new guidance that's available on it, and the link to that will be put in the chat. This new guidance is specific to the education sector. And specifically, this indicator measures the percent of supported organizations with improved performance. And we define an organization as a group of people who work together in an organized way for a shared purpose. And the important part here is that it is about performance that's actually been demonstrated and improved, not just output level changes like the number of people who have been trained. And what makes this indicator really interesting is that the process of applying it actually helps us to embody the principles of the local capacity strengthening policy and our values as an agency. So I'll walk you through that process now very briefly. And this process is all about prioritizing the local context and the stated needs of local organizations. So first, priorities for capacity strengthening have to be jointly defined, most importantly by the organization themselves, but also with input from USAID or other relevant stakeholders. And then after that, those priority areas, after those priority areas are defined, the local organization then needs to assess itself to determine what is the current state and what's its desired performance, where it wants to be. Then, of course, USAID will provide some sort of resources or support to improve around those priorities. And then finally, we measure that change. And here, the organization and USAID or other stakeholders have to determine their own metric for how they're going to measure that change. And getting that right can be challenging. And then, of course, this whole process should be documented. So the new guidance for the indicator is pretty detailed and includes everything you need to know about how to use the indicator to support work in the education sector, including examples. Its biggest contribution is that it helps to define not only how the indicator can be used to measure our work with CBOs and NGOs and the like, but also the impact it helps to capture the impact of the capacity support that we provide in our system strengthening work, which is, of course, an increasingly large part of the work that we do in the education sector. So as we mentioned earlier, one way that we can do this is by counting subunits of large institutions as organizations for the purpose of this indicator. So ministry directorates, decentralized offices of a ministry, departments of a higher education institution. But in order to be counted, that CBLD9 process has to be followed. So that means that the subunit has to play an active role in determining its own priorities and in the solutioning. It can't just be a change or an intervention that it was instructed to do or forced to do from above or from the outside. So I'll leave you with just a few teasers about and takeaways about shifts. Oops, there we go. Perfect. I'll leave you with just a few teasers or takeaways about the shifts that we're recommending for this guidance. If you have any questions, you can email me directly. We have my email address in the chat. So first, people think of this indicator as complicated. It does not have to be. You can use a complex tool, but you do not have to use any tool at all. And you can even use metrics that the local organization is already using. So we should really prioritize simplicity here. Second, given the deliberate process that we just described for the indicator, sampling is not appropriate for use with this indicator. Another key takeaway is that you should measure direct support rather than indirect support. So in other words, if we're supporting improved learning outcomes through improved teacher instruction, you'll want to measure institutional instructional capacity, not learning outcomes for the purposes of this indicator. And then finally, we encourage folks to not just use the indicator for reporting, but also for learning, and to do so by using it in conjunction with other complementary indicators and a robust narrative. With that, I'll hand the mic back over to Allison. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank the teams for those great overviews. That was really super helpful. I also would like to remind everybody, obviously, as we're talking about localization, language matters. And it's very important to USAID that we continue to work to provide the languages and work in languages needed for across all of our partners. With that, I just want to remind folks to go to the interpretation globe at the bottom of your screen and click on it and select the language that you need that are being provided here today. Great. And so now we're going to hear how some of the USAID missions and our partners are working to apply the local capacity strengthening principles in practice. I'm going to now lead a panel discussion called From Principles to Practice. And I'm pleased to welcome a very amazing panel from our partners in Nigeria. I want to introduce the panelists. First, Nura Ibrahim. He's a senior education program manager with USAID Nigeria. Thank you. Okay. He has over 20 years of experience working on education and health programs in development and conflict-affected areas in Nigeria. Nura has worked for many international organizations, such as PSI, MSH, and PACT, strengthening healthcare systems and basic education programming. Nora currently sits on USAID's Education in Crisis and Conflict Network Steering Group. Nora has been with USAID Nigeria since 2018. Next, HELN Biaku Alase is the National President of the Deaf Women Association of Nigeria and the founder and executive director of the Deaf Women Aloud initiative. She holds a bachelor's degree in guidance and counseling from the University of Abuja. She is a sexual and reproductive health rights advocate of women with disabilities, especially deaf women and girls in Nigeria. She is an alumna of the Disability, Sexuality, and Rights Online Institute and a member of a ministerial committee on emergency maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent health and nutrition activities. And our last panelist is Dr. Amina Adamu. She's a professor in the Department of English and Literary Studies at Bayero University, Kano in Nigeria. She is the Deputy Director for Administration and Partnership at the Nigeria Center for Reading Research and Development, funded also by USAID. Dr. Adamu was among the 6 faculty fellows of Nigeria Center for Reading Research and Development that attended a 6-month training program on early grade reading at Florida State University. So to kick off the panel, Nora, I'd like to start with a question for you. In the guidance, there is a case study on the leveraging education assistance resources in Nigeria, Learn to Read Activities Technical Assistance Approach. What does the partner-driven technical assistance approach look like? And how are you utilizing CBLD9 to measure the benefits of capacity strengthening? Over to you.
Thank you. To start with, LEARN stands for Learning Education Assistance and Resources in Nigeria. It's a follow-on activity from Nigeria Northern Education Initiative Plus, which was implemented prior to Learn activity. Under the NEI Plus, we did what we call service delivery, providing teaching and learning materials and also teacher professional development to government and to teachers. In the Learn activity, the approach is different because we provide the technical assistance through what we call partner-driven partnership, in the sense that government, to be more specific, State Universal Basic Education Board at the different states demands for the services that they require. And USAID funded activity Learn supported the state in that particular demand. So it's more of demand driven than supply. Like the previous presentation is not instructed, like Rebecca mentioned, but it's a partnership where co-creation was utilized. So we have what we call a market fair, where we actually display the kind of resources we have that we can provide, we can support government, and government look at the menu and said, for instance, we need you to support us in the development of teaching and learning materials. So we come together with the state partners. The state partners provide the resources while we provide the technical assistance. Currently, we have 3 states that have indicated interest out of many states that actually show interest, but we're prioritizing political will and also commitment of the state. We have one in the southeast, Ebonyi. We have one in the north central, Niger State, and we have one in the northeast, Gombe State. Each of them developed a work plan together with us. This time around, it wasn't that the implementing partner developed the work plans. No, it was collaboration between the state officials, the directors, and also the implementers of the program and the supported program that USAID is supporting to develop the work plan. So it's like an agreed work plan that is mutually agreeable, and people continue to work along those lines of communication. So just recently, one of the key things we do is to look at the institutional capacity. We call it ICAT. Institutional capacity helps to understand the different units of the Department of Basic Education, where are the gaps and where are the limitations. So we're able to get a lot of those input coming from the state partners themselves, and we develop together with the state partners what we call vision and exercise. Where do you want to be and how do you want to start? So we did a lot of interactions with the state, and finally, I'll use this term, the demand-driven work plan was developed, and then the state is implementing the work plan. And each of the states where we are supporting came up with what they call technical working committees. The technical working committees are government officials who are in the government system, so it ensures sustainability and ownership of the programs. So currently, states are actually coming forward, asking for support and how do we get this thing done. And again, we also supported in some of the states where they require, we do what we call data assessment, because Nigeria has a lot of political way to actually drive the out-of-school agenda. So, but there's issues of data. So there's a new program which Nigeria is actually pursuing, which is called the National Education Roadmap, and also followed by DOT. DOT stands for Data, Out of School, Teacher Professional Development, and Skills. And the program aligns with what we're doing with the states. So some of the states required us to support them in data assessment. So state is taking lead. In Niger State, for instance, the chair of the SUBEB actually is actually prioritizing education management information system. And this time around is the SUBEB, or government agency, that is leading the implementation and programming of the activities in those states. So that's what we do. And CBLD 9 indicator, like has been mentioned earlier, has been one of our key indicator that we love, because it helps us to track the institutional capacity this time around, which we hope indirectly can also affect the learning outcomes. But for now, it actually relates to the institutional capacity. And once that is well grounded and there's a good foundation around that, then we believe so many things will fall in line to make sure we achieve that. So I'll stop here in case of any additional input or any question, then I can come back. Thank you, and over.
Terrific. Thank you so much for that overview. That was very interesting and helpful. Now I'd like to turn Helen to you. And I did want to remind everybody to please choose your language on the globe. Even if it's English, you should choose your language for interpretation. Helen, your work in Nigeria demonstrates so many of the principles of local capacity strengthening. One in particular is around mutuality. Could you please tell us about how you've both received capacity strengthening support working with USAID, but also how your organization has equally strengthened the capacity of USAID? Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much for this beautiful question. As you already know, with the US funding, which supported the E3 project on education, empowerment, amplifying our voices. So luckily for us, as the Deaf Women Association of Nigeria, as you know, our organizational setting is very important, building our capacity to be able to build the right holders in the grassroots level. With the Deaf E3 project, the capacity building that has been embedded in us has made us to train other deaf women in other states in Nigeria to have a lot of capacity. Now, this is due to lack of information, resources, knowledge. So with this capacity training by the E3, we have been strengthening our policy. For example, as the data, we don't know the data, we don't have the data when it comes to access to funding opportunities. Now, with the capacity that USAID has given to us, it has got our capacity in the whole 36 states in Nigeria. So many at the state level, the grassroots level, they do not have the opportunity to access these resources. Now, with the knowledge and experience that we have been trained on, we've been able to do the data connection, data analysis for adequate and proper advocacy in the country. And this we use to advocate to identify the challenges, the gap. And now we are preparing a national convention for deaf women in Nigeria. This will be implemented to guiding with the international, also with the International Women's Day. We'll be having this event where we train the capacity of deaf women, speak about the challenges, what we face and build their capacity. So that these deaf women will be able to have their own work on their self-esteem, and also be able to advocate for themselves and have a positive mindset about the things that formerly they live with. And now now that they're already trained and their capacity has been built and self-empowered, most deaf women are the most vulnerable in the society. They do not enjoy adequate information access. So with this convention, they're going to be trained on the opportunities, their rights, and to understanding what they can use to demand, and this capacity that USAID has funded with Deaf E3. So we appreciate Deaf E3 for what they have done on building our capacity. And also because of that, we are planning a national women's summit where we are going to bring all the deaf women across the 36 states, identifying each gaps, each challenges. With this knowledge strengthening, and this has been so impactful for us. So we thank USAID for that support, for the funding. So you see, knowledge is expensive, and that is because we lack the awareness and we lack the resources. And this has helped us to identify the gaps and to build our own organization, and to also measure the challenges and get the solutions to them. So this alone means a lot to us at Deaf Women Association of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen. That's amazing. And I really do appreciate you speaking to the partnership that we have together from USAID, and we look forward to continued support. And thank you, Ruth, for translation. Next, I'd like to talk with Dr. Amina. One of the key themes in today's USAID's new guidance is around the role of higher education institutions in strengthening education systems, especially basic education. How has capacity strengthening support to Bayero University Kano helped improve the local system to deliver on early grade reading outcomes?
Okay, thank you for that. The capacity strengthening to our university helped in many ways to deliver the EGR outcomes. I think the first of them is the establishment of the NCRRD, that is the Nigeria Center for Reading Research and Development, which is a collaboration between Florida State University and Bayero University, of course funded by USAID. So during the collaboration, between the two states or the two institutions, there has been a training for the fellows. Fellows of the center, NCRRD, were trained on early grade reading, both in Nigeria and in Florida. So when the collaboration came to an end, in 2020, we realized that we have gotten relatively enough skill to mount certain programs that will now impact on other teachers. So we started with a postgraduate diploma program, which is, we call it PGDTR, Postgraduate Diploma in Teaching of Reading, in collaboration with our education faculty. It provides in-service teachers, the opportunity to increase or to enhance their skills in reading and other literacy activities. So after that, the NCRRD also decided to write a proposal to Bayero University for a possibility of mounting a master's degree and even a PhD in the teaching of reading. So many teachers all over the country are interested in the program. Some of them, are handicapped because of the issue of distance. So we've decided to make it possible to go online, to start, an online program that will cover both the postgraduate diploma and possibly when we are allowed to start the master's and PhD also, it will be online. That is our dream. There is also a certificate course. We have designed a curriculum for certificate courses in which in-service teachers that want to go into the teaching of early grade reading will come during vacation and, undergo that program for like 6 weeks. So normally schools will come to us and indicate their interest, and local government authorities also that want their teachers to enhance their literacy skills will also come to us for that also. Then it is mounted during vacation. Then apart from that, we have our annual conferences. The annual conference has been on for over 4 years now. During that conference, we have literacy scholars will come together, brainstorm, have discussions on issues to do with early grade reading in the country and possible way forward. Also, teachers in the field will present their research, long-term experience research through articles. They will write articles, and the articles will be presented, in our journal articles, journal publications. It will be published and then yearly. So teachers are normally given the opportunity to come to our conferences and to come to our programs to enhance their reading skills. We also have, a pre-conference workshop. Before the workshop, we invite teachers from all over the country to come, and then they will be trained for a day or two on early grade reading. So all these are meant to enhance their capacity or to show how the capacity we are strengthening in Bayero University is, enhancing the outcome of EGR in the country. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Nora. How do you see strengthening the capacity of local education systems contributing to learning outcomes in Nigeria?
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you very much again. For instance, what we did with the Federal Ministry of Education when we started the Learn to Read was to actually work with government and see how we can get the national reading framework, which serve as a guiding tools for the state. Nigeria has 36 states in Abuja, so that you have a federal document that is being approved by the National Council of Education, which is the highest level of education policy approval in Nigeria. So that document has been approved, and we look at it as also improving local institutions. Now states can utilize the national reading framework in developing their early grade reading programs at the state level. Again, also we worked with the Universal Basic Education Commission based on demand, to develop the result-based financing, that is RBF, where the Universal Basic Education actually was supported, giving technical assistance to come up with a pay-for result for different states that are implementing early grade reading based on learning outcomes. So states are competing to actually access those kind of funding to enable them to improve their educational outcomes at the basic level. That is still ongoing, and some state has been selected to actually achieve that. And then at the CSO level, we also worked with Connected Development Code, which work with community mobilization department of the different Universal Basic Education Commission in the state where we work to ensure that there's a effective monitoring of learning, and also community structures are being involved in the monitoring of education, and issues are reported to local education council so that action can be taken. So that is also part of the local institution capacity building we're providing and working with the local institutions to provide such kind of support, so that in the long term we are going to measure to see how has the learning outcomes actually improved. There will be a lot of contributions based on what we're doing, probably not maybe causality issues, but at least a lot of contributions to that effect. And then again, we work with State Basic Education Board to also look at the teacher professional development component of their activities and see how we provide support in terms of developing manuals together with the Universal Basic Education Commission, in line with the National Education Research and Development Council, which is the highest body that actually supervise on curriculum development. So that is also a collaboration that is going within the system and at the local institution level to strengthen learning outcomes. And finally, at the national level, we also work with the Federal Ministry of Education in developing the assessment technical working group, which was established to ensure that assessment is in line with the foundational learning outcomes. And also in line with that, we also work with the Federal Ministry of Education within the National Monitoring and Learning Achievement. That is also part of what we do. Right now, early grade reading is being incorporated into the National Annual School Census, which hitherto was not there. So it's hardly to track such kind of progress. So we see a lot of tractions going on, and we hope it will continue. Thank you, and over.
Wow, what an incredible effort and comprehensive effort at working within the local system to address reading and early learning from all sides of the from all angles, resulting in improved learning outcomes. So very commendable effort. Thank you. Helen, I wanted to turn back to you and ask if you could just speak to how has the improved capacity of your organization contributed to improving learning outcomes for Nigeria?
Thank you very much. As you all know, some members of my organization are teachers, and they're part of the Deaf Teachers Association of Nigeria, and they are under the multilingual, multimodal pedagogic approach, where they have been trained on the educational system that is best. And now the government's definition of inclusive education is not as we want it. When a child is born deaf, there is no early language intervention for the child. Now, let me share with you, a child born from a hearing parent, and the child is hearing, already has an early grade teaching intervention and language. But a deaf child born into a hearing family has a late early grade learning intervention and language, because the deaf parents do not understand the Nigerian Sign Language and the best communication skills for the child. And now the child has a late speech, late language, and this is language deprivation for the child. Now, a 1-year-old child who is hearing already has the language, already has the speech, already has the early grade education, and already has an education. But a deaf child would have a late early grade education. And also, we are advocating that the Nigerian Sign Language be imputed in the school curriculum so that this child can adapt into the language. And also an assessment for sign language for the teachers to have access to the deaf community and deaf students. And we need to also identify the measurement of deaf child in the school. And also the teacher should be able to define what education is for the deaf children and what they need from the primary level, the basic level, from the primary to from the elementary to the higher education. So it would be good to introduce sign language in the curriculum, both at the basic level and the higher education level. And we are going with our slogan that says, leave no one behind. And we also need to advocate for more multilingual, multimodal pedagogic approach. And this was funded by USAID when this capacity training was done, so that these deaf children can enjoy the quality of an inclusive education. As a deaf community, we do not have this opportunity long before now. So I thank USAID that has funded that project of MMP through that approach, and it has built their capacity and having a classroom teaching, interactive classroom teaching for the deaf learners. And so that this deaf child who has started education very late due to lack of access to education. And in Nigeria, we have late intervention for early education for deaf learners. And from the age of 0 to 5 years, a deaf child already lost so many years, and there's language deprivation already. And we have some deaf learners who started education at the age of 10, 12, 15. This is already very late, and they really cannot meet the standard of a hearing child who has started language and speech from the very early beginning. So we're so grateful for USAID capacity support and the learning to have a proper design, to have deaf learners have proper access to inclusive education, and we are demanding the government to have an inclusive curriculum in the Nigerian Sign Language. I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and we hope that access to education will be quality for everybody, regardless of who they are or their disability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that thorough explanation, and we appreciate the partnership. Last question for you, Professor Amina, and I know there's some interest in the chat of you posting links to some of the programming. Same question for you, Doctor. How has the improved capacity of your organization contributed to overall learning outcomes in Nigeria?
Okay, just last month, we were invited. It was a collaboration between our center and Universal Basic Education Commission. We were invited to train all the teachers in Nigeria on early grade reading. So at least 3 teachers were invited to Abuja for us to train them. Then after the training, it was like a train the trainer kind of program, whereby they will go and cascade the training to their own teachers there. So I think that is a great achievement, because when we approached the big for the program, they were like, what are we going to do new to the whole thing? But when we went and do the training, they were really excited, and they hope it's going to be a continuous training exercise for us. Apart from that, the center is normally organizes a kind of reading program for children during vacation. During vacation, we'll send invitations to parents. Parents will now send their children to our center. Then all those components of teaching, of reading, will be taught to them, not just in English, in Hausa, in Arabic, they will be taught those components of reading. Parents are really excited about this. At the end, we'll organize a reading competition, and prizes will be given to the winners and so on. So I think all these things we've mentioned, ranging from our activities of the postgraduate diploma programs and our proposed masters and PhD, our annual conferences, they are really something that is we are the first, so to say, to have started it in a Nigerian institution. So the capacity strengthening to BUK is really yielding outcome when it comes to the EGR kind of activity, because so many states now and so many organizations are sending their invitation to us to collaborate with them to go and train their teachers on early grade reading. So it is really a step forward, and we really thank the USAID for the capacity strengthening they give to Bayero University. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists. That was an honor to have this opportunity to hear from you and all of the amazing work you're doing in Nigeria. And thank you for your partnership. Over to you, Stephanie, to close us out.
Thank you, everyone. And I know we're right at the hour. So I just want to acknowledge all of our panelists. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions prior to today's event. We did use some of these to shape the session. We will also be using those as well as questions that came through the chat in future resources, including a blog series that will be coming on education links and future learning events around local capacity strengthening in education. And then, Maddie, please go to the last slide. Finally, be sure to scan the QR codes to check out the guidance documents we talked about. We'll also be posting them in the chat. And thank you everyone so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are in the world.